The Israeli military says it has killed a top Hezbollah commander, Fuad Shukr, in an airstrike on a South Beirut suburb. Israel said it believed Shukr, seen here in a U.S. wanted poster, was responsible for an attack in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights that killed 12 children and teenagers on Saturday. Lebanon is condemning the airstrike as a criminal act. Meanwhile, the UN is urging calm, fearful that the region could be on the brink of a wider war. Israeli army spokesman Daniel Hagari described Shukr as a key strategist within Hezbollah.
This evening, the IDF carried out a targeted strike in Beirut on Fuad Shukr, also known as Said Muhsin, Hezbollah's most senior military commander and the head of its strategic unit. Fuad Shukr was the right-hand man to Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's leader and his advisor in planning and directing attacks and operations. Fuad Shukr was the commander responsible for the Majd al-Shams massacre, Hezbollah's ongoing aggression and brutal attacks are dragging the people of Lebanon and the entire Middle East into a wider escalation. While we prefer to resolve hostilities without a wider war, the IDF is fully prepared for any scenario.
Over to Rebecca Ritters now in Jerusalem. Rebecca, what is the latest on this Israeli strike?
Well, Stephen, this strike took place shortly before 8 p.m. local time. We began getting reports of blasts in the southern suburb of Beirut, seen as a stronghold of Hezbollah. Those reports then quickly confirmed by the Israeli military that there was indeed a strike carried out against a senior Hezbollah commander, as you just heard there from Daniel Hagari, the head of the Israeli military, or the spokesman for the Israeli military, I should say. They said that this was a targeted strike. And the timing and the language of that message from the Israeli military, how quickly they responded to this strike, kind of gave an indication that this was, in fact, the retaliatory strike that we were expecting in response to the Majd al-Shams attack in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights that killed 12 children on Saturday. Israel blamed Hezbollah for that, though they have denied that they had any involvement, though this was largely seen as the retaliation for that strike, considered by the Israeli military as very limited. Now, we've had conflicting reports as to whether or not the target was successful. You heard there from Daniel Hagari saying that they were successful in killing the target, that senior Hamas commander, but we've had conflicting media reports and we've heard nothing from Hezbollah yet to confirm the death of that commander, though we have, as you also reported, been hearing from the Lebanese health ministry saying that there were 3 civilian deaths, 1 woman and 2 children, and dozens injured in that strike. And of course, they're scouring the rubble and the site of the attack for more dead and injured. Now, the Lebanese government has condemned this, saying that they will take their complaints to the United Nations.
Rebecca, what can you tell us about Fuad Shukr, the Hezbollah commander that Israel claims to have killed?
Well, you heard there from Daniel Hagari that Fuad Shukr, also known as Haj Musan, was seen as a very senior, in fact, the Israeli military calling him the most senior military commander of Hezbollah, who's seen as a key advisor to Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. He was seen as his right-hand man, as you heard there. He was wanted not only by Israel, but also by the United States. In fact, there was a $5 million bounty on his head for information that could lead to his arrest. He was seen as one of the masterminds behind a bombing in 1983 against US Marines in Beirut. But he was also a Hezbollah member since 1985. We're told that he was the mastermind behind many military operations of Hezbollah against Israel, particularly in the recent months, in the last 10 months, where we've been seeing these tit-for-tat exchanges between Hezbollah and Israel. He was largely seen as masterminding many of that military operation there, including, of course, what we saw take place on Saturday with that with that rocket that hit Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, killing 12 children, seen as the mastermind there. Now, the fact that this was a military target and the fact that it was somebody that was wanted by the US as well as Israel may give an indication as to where Israel is going with this retaliation, perhaps hoping or gambling that this is not going to spill over and cause perhaps the response that everyone was fearing in the region and making this into a wider conflict.
Rebecca, you mentioned that this was considered something of a limited strike from Israel. To what extent is the country now preparing for a further response from Hezbollah?
Well, we haven't heard anything from Hezbollah, as I mentioned. We are expecting a statement from them, and there is very much an expectation that Hezbollah will also respond militarily to this attack. But we haven't had any confirmation, as I said, of whether Fouad Shukr is indeed dead. We haven't heard anything from Hassan Nasrallah or any other spokesperson from Hezbollah. They have said in the past, though, that any strike in Beirut would be considered crossing a red line. Though we have seen strikes in Beirut, most recently in January, the Israeli military conducting a strike in Beirut to take out a senior Hamas commander, and that was not met with a major response by Hezbollah. So we'll have to see. Of course, it is expected that there will be some kind of response. The question is just how big that response will be and whether that will trigger some kind of wider conflict or wider response from Israel. In fact, I mean, this is a region that is on edge. It has been on edge, of course, for the last 10 months since this war began. But of course, it's been spiking, ebbing and flowing in these 10 months. And of course, after the events of Saturday, where 12 children were killed in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, this has, of course, triggered more concerns, and this region is on edge. But everybody hopeful. Diplomatic efforts certainly underway. A lot of US pressure to try to contain this and keep it limited. So we are expecting a response, but of course, that remains to be seen just how big that response will be.
All right, that's DW correspondent Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem. Thank you. Behnam Ben Taleblu is a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. He joins us from Washington for more on this. Behnam, welcome to the show. You heard there that this is considered by many to be something of a limited strike, or at least Israel is framing this as a limited strike. What's your assessment of this strike?
Great to be with you. Thus far, that is what it's shaping out to be. There was a lot of conflicting reporting in the aftermath of the strike. First, there was the claim that Fouad Shukr was killed. Then within an hour, it was walked back. Then another half hour later, first Arab outlets and then official Israeli sources were able to confirm that Fouad Shukr had been killed. There were really just questions over the possession of his body at this point in time. And if past as prologue, in the response to the killing of a major commander, be it for the Air Force, be it for the Air Defense Force, be it for some of the Redwan forces, or be it other senior Hezbollah military officials, those have been peaks in the escalatory cycle between Hezbollah and Israel. So indeed, everyone is bracing for what the response may look like.
Assuming it is true that this Hezbollah commander, Fouad Shukr, was killed, help us understand how important a figure he was in this group.
So he's played a key role in this organization. As the previous diplomatic correspondent had just mentioned, this person was involved in the 1983 Marine barracks bombing, killing over 240 American service persons. And that was really the terrorist calling card that got Lebanese Hezbollah on the map. As you know, there was a lot of internecine fighting during the Lebanese Civil War, and as well as with the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, and Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, newly formed, took advantage of that chaos and basically created this group out of a whole series of rival Shia militias in southern Lebanon, and basically made it what it is today, which is the tip of the spear. And on every step along the way, Fouad Shukr has played a key role, whether that was in militarily bailing out Iran's state ally, which is the Assad regime in Syria, which also used to occupy part of Lebanon, as well as playing a major role in the upgrade to Hezbollah's long-range strike capabilities, basically being part of the effort to turn rockets into missiles, providing them with the know-how and technology to develop precision-guided munitions. Also, and perhaps most proximately related to the current attack, Shukr was believed to be behind the recent artillery rocket fire at the north in Majd al-Shams that killed 12 children.
Would Shukr's absence then, assuming that he is dead, would it structurally weaken Hezbollah?
This is the theory of death by 1,000 cuts that you're seeing with respect to several kinds of military pushback by Israel in the Middle East, whether that's against Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps or against Lebanese Hezbollah or against senior Hamas commanders. It is, in my view, obvious that all of these different terror groups will promote someone else to fill that position. But the institutional knowledge of this individual, particularly given the highly localized role he played in the first 2 decades of Hezbollah's existence, will likely mean that the group will be more off balance than on balance. But then again, this is a group that has resources, significant state support, and has capability and intent to continue this war of attrition that we've seen begin since October 8th against Israel.
We talked about this being a limited strike in terms of what it could have been compared to what it could have been. What kind of reaction can Israel expect from Hezbollah in this case?
This is indeed, I think, a place where past is likely to be prologue. If we look in 2024 alone, some of the major spikes that we've seen between Hezbollah and Israel have followed a significant blow, or when a significant blow has been levied against the terror group, particularly when senior level commanders have been killed. So it's likely that Hezbollah is going to respond, again, if past is prologue, and how that affects the larger kind of calculations of Israel with respect to a potential third Lebanon war in the north remains to be seen. Already you have Iran's newly inaugurated president Masoud Pezeshkian in a phone conversation with the French president Emmanuel Macron talking about the potential for a wider regional war given the way things are looking in the north.
Pezeshkian, of course, had his inauguration today in Iran as president. To what extent is Iran going to influence where things go from now?
Part of the success of this regional constellation of terror and proxy forces that the Islamic Republic has created or co-opted over the past 4.5 decades in the heartland of the Middle East is that by preying on downtrodden and dispossessed populations who already have a grievance, all Tehran really needs to do is provide material support for these groups for them to be shooting in the same direction that the Islamic Republic wants to shoot at. And indeed, it was no accident that the drone the Houthis fired a little over a week and a half ago, marking a historic first 2,600-kilometer journey, striking in Tel Aviv, killing one person, was an Iranian drone, much as the artillery rocket, the Falak 1, that killed those 12 children in the north in Mashal Shams was also Iranian-provided and Iranian-designed, in fact, produced by subsidiaries of Iran's Ministry of Defense. So the regime's fingerprints are all over this, and they're quite content with this boom and bust cycle of violence that we're seeing surround Israel, both in the north and in the south.
To what extent is there an appetite then for a full regional war? It seems like to this point there's been there's been a kind of a shooting war between both sides, and yet nothing that's really blown up to this level. Is there an appetite for something larger, or is this something that both sides are trying to avoid?
When looking at the way the Islamic Republic has prosecuted its regional security strategy over the past 45 years, it is quite clear that they're cognizant of thresholds, but they do show a propensity to escalate when the opportunity presents itself. And if you look at a couple of the different theaters, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, it is quite clear to me that there's at least a 5, if not 6 front war already underway in the region, perhaps a war that is a little bit different from some of the major continental wars in Europe, but these are precision fires wars, long-range strike wars, wars of attrition, not just against the capability of one side, but against the resolve of one side to continue to defend themselves. And that's part of the larger theory of this cycle of violence that Iran helped create when it supported groups like Hamas for October 7th, as well as what it's been able to backstop since October 8th with them bringing online and the connecting of all of these different fronts. And particularly after April 13-14, when the war moved from the shadows up more overtly, right, there's always a non-zero chance now that things could go much bigger and scarier than before.
We'll have to leave it there. Behnam Ben Taleblu at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. That's it for our show. Thanks for watching.